All right, hello, hello, and we continue on our workbench. So today, now in this video, because I might be doing multiple streams throughout the day just to see, how attendance is, what times people join in. So far, I've gotten a better attendance in the mornings. Well, in the 10 a.m.s around that area, 10, 12s. But let's see how this goes today. But we're going to be going over how to interact with the online world because honestly, programming on its own is pretty good, but there's a case scenario where, hey Grant, how you doing? Where we want to interact with the online world and expand our workbench's abilities. And Grant, you're kind of in this section too, so either you watch now or we're gonna do it next time we get a session going next week. Um, so I mean, me and you made a much more attractive one. In fact, let me actually adjust this a little bit and get a little bit of a better design for it because white background's pretty boring. So we're gonna do the same thing me and you did. Yes, sir. Next Wednesday. You know it. Next Wednesday, we're gonna do basically, well, a little bit more with the little input here so we can have more control over what our actual interactive terminal, you can call it, our interactive commands are gonna be. But I want to get a background going, so I'm gonna do the same thing we did before. Gonna go to Wallhaven. I'm probably gonna pick a Minecraft one again, because Minecraft is the best. Maybe pick a different one this time. Ooh, I like that one. I like the visuals on that one. Let's see. Ooh, that's so nice. I like it, I like it. All right, so the first thing we want to do anytime we basically want to customize or attach something to our code is to organize it in the same directory. So I'm going to save this. Throw it in the stream folder, which is our working folder currently. Then saving that sucker in here. And there it is. So now we have ourselves this image file. And it's kind of named. I don't like the way it's named, so I'm going to rename it something simple like background. We can name it anything we want, but I'm going to name it background. And we've done a modification to the, let's see, to the style of our H1. Yeah, dude, the shader sectors are really nice. I added a couple of them from Optifine, the Minecraft Optifine shader, which you can do too. Now with that, I don't know how good your graphics card is on your Mac, but you should be able to basically attach Optifine and potentially do some shaders, some nice little effects to it. But for now, we're going to be using this as a wallpaper for our stream workbench. So I'm going to first want to specify where I want this wallpaper. Now, currently, I want to basically have it as the whole background. And the whole background is the body of our code here. I'm going to move this stuff over though. I'm basically now I'm going to delete it. It's gone. So in order for me to modify the body, nice shady shade. Indeed, Slim Shady, if you know what I mean. Uh, I'm going to use the body keyword to talk about this tag, the body tag. So the body tag basically represents from beginning to end. Remember when I told you that all tags have that beginning and ending connection. So the body is holding that section. And if I want to adjust the whole page, I basically want to target the body. And that means in my style, in my head here section, I'm going to take body as my main target. And I'm going to do background, image, and then the URL location of that image. Now, since it's going to be basically a string of information, you want to make sure you're using quotes to target what it is, and it's basically in the same directory. The one thing me and you didn't go over from last time, Grant, is that when we're dealing with this name of the image, it's really talking about the name of the file, background.png in this case. And you have to remember this stream, in my case, our case, stream1 HTML is located in a specific folder. That folder basically knows where it is, and or that file, stream1, knows where it is and can only see the same files in the current folder. So what you're looking at really is saying, hey, stream one, you know where you are. Well, next to you, there's this file called background PNG. We can also kind of organize it with folders and structures and things like that. But for now, we're going to keep it simple. And I'm going to say, hey, just look for background PNG. I'm going to save that, refresh, and boom. It's a little bit zoomed in and it's very checkered, but we can fix that with a couple of modifications. Here I'm gonna do background, what was it? Size, cover. That should at least give it a nice flush left to right, and it shouldn't give us the checkered issue. So now it's gonna basically cover the window at its general size. So when we resize it, it doesn't give us those. Right. For this one, we named it stream1, but remember for your file, it's, I believe, index.html. Remember? The naming, I want you to realize that the naming is, it's basically custom. We name it what we want to name it. I named it stream1 because I'm streaming this file, and that's appropriate. Yeah. So you named it index, but considering the index.html is actually basic like the standard. Every single website, every single, yeah, exactly, index HTML. Every single page online will have this index.html. Think of it like whenever a browser goes to a website, it's looking for this particular name. So it loads up the index.html. That's why we're naming it. It's a very standard name, but we can name this anything as long as we basically just open that file manually. But for a browser, when you go to like google.com or youtube.com, it's basically opening up index.html. So it's very default. It's the standard naming notation. For me, I'm not using this as anything. I'm just opening it up directly from the file as I have it here in my folder structure. So I can name it whatever I want. Now from here then, I'm gonna do some modifications again, maybe give it a little bit. Oh yeah, true. Let me do this because now it's the workbench is kind of ugly. So I'm going to organize. Remember the div we just did today? A little divider here. So we can organize our workbench space. Nothing's gonna change for now. But when I give this a class of, let's say, workbench design, we can name this anything. In this case, again, just a personal touch. This is what we decide to name it. So we're going to call it workbench design, but we can call it workbench D, whatever, design, etc. We can name this anything as long as we use it up here. The way we use it up here is since we created a class, we have to maintain that it is a class, and we use the dot to basically say, look for a class with the name workbench dot design. Oh, sorry, not dot, dash design. So the dot says a class type and then the name of that class that we've given it. That's it. And we can name it anything as long as we match the design. And I'll show you what happens when it breaks. So again, we're going to do background color. I'm going to do a white color. Actually, I'm going to skip directly to the RGBA. This is how we do our red, green, blue values manually. And actually, that's pretty cool. It tells us here, widely available across major browsers since 2015. So this has been basically how we've done it since 2015. Very cool little detail. Hello, hello, Web Beast. Welcome in. And we're basically going to do a simple white background. But the reason I use RGBA is not for the coloring. It's one of the viewers on YouTube. So you guys can look at each other from the uh thank you. Appreciate it, Blood Beast. Appreciate it. Uh very skill set's very kind of jack of all trades, professional of none, essentially. But the reason I'm using RGBA is because I love transparency. Transparency is the A in the RGBA, which is for the alpha channel. You can use this in Photoshop, you can use this in all kinds of different image editors. You're looking for transparency. You're essentially looking for an alpha channel to add to an image, which gives it transparency. So boom, give or take, that looks all right. I'm gonna reduce that to about maybe 5. No, let's do 2. A very light alpha. There we go. That's nice. Still keeps the background vivid. A couple of things I like to add always just to clean it up. A little bit of a breathing space. It's not very spacey, so I like to put in padding, but give it a 5%, maybe less. It might be too much with 5. I'll put like a 3% padding, a margin of 2%. I know we did 5%, Grant, but you can always change the numbers, Grant. I want you to know this. From the file that we did together, you can change the numbers, and I do recommend you do that. Play with those numbers and see how it changes, like, as I'm doing it now. We put padding of 5 and margin of 5, but change the numbers. Yeah, just keep the format. Like, don't change it too much, right? See how I'm changing just a 5 to a 3. That's it. Change them, play around, see how you like them. And this is what happens. It gives us a little bit more space here. So we're essentially basically doing some web design here. Nice. Well, this is basically the beginnings of web design and websites. In the end, we're going to be doing a little bit more of the mechanics and JavaScript, but I decided to kind of do a little bit of a housekeeping here and clean up my workbench a little bit. And then I am a fan of border radius. Always love a little bit of a border radius. Now, I didn't tell you, Grant, about other values. Percentages are what you're familiar with, but you can also use something called a pixel, right? Pixels. Pixels on the screen. So 25 pixels would be a case to round the border at a 25 pixel value. I wouldn't recommend sharing anything on the chat. If you do want to get in contact with me for anything further, you can always visit me on my website, superscholar.xyz, and you can get tutoring or you can use some of the brain training games I have, read about the academic articles I write, any of those, but I wouldn't share my email in chat or anything particular. But you can always get in contact with me through Patreon. This is where it's going to take you. In Patreon, you can join for free and communicate with me there. But otherwise, keep your info to you. I always recommend that. The internet's the internet. So be safe. Never give any details out in public is my always recommendation. Right, so pixels. Pixels, well, they're very tiny. There's a thing to consider that it's not visible on the main screen. If you kind of get really close to the screen, the monitor, you'll see the pixels, but you probably ruin your eyes at the same time. We're considering here that the 25 pixels refresh, and there's that little 25 pixel border radius. It smooths out the corners. I can also change that to 50, and you'll notice that it adjusts to even more, which is not bad, honestly. It looks pretty good this way. So I might keep it at 50. That's why you should basically play around with the numbers, Grant. See which ones you like, play around with the values and the design. Oh, and if you're worried about messing it up, make a backup. How do you make a backup? Basically, go to your Finder because you have the Mac, click on the index HTML, and then Command C, copy, Command V. And you can make a copy of your code so when you're editing it, we can basically, or you can have a backup for yourself. So you don't have, like, if you mess something up, you can always go back to the copy. Yeah, Command C first and then Command V. So you can make a copy of the code. So if anything happens, you mess it up, you can always go back and take a look at the code and make sure that uh, basically you can compare it and fix anything. So that's always a good strategy, is to keep a backup. So copy and paste, Command C, and then Command V. Yeah, I like the 50 pixels as well. Yes, good, exactly. So I'm gonna keep the 25 there, and workbench, stream workbench seems decent. There is something else I probably wanna do. Let me see if I can center these guys. Content, no, align content. There it is. So let's do align content. And can I do center? Let's see if that's gonna do everything. No, it's not gonna do everything. Unfortunately, it didn't align stuff. So I do want to basically align this to the middle. It might be a little tricky, at least on the basis of doing it in a simple way. So I'm just gonna do margin left, and then I'm gonna give it like a 25%. That should push it towards the middle. Okay, that's not bad. But also, I'm gonna do a width of 50% so I can balance it out. This side is open, this side is full. So then I'm gonna do this here, and boom. Cool. So now it's getting a little bit cleaner. I still don't like how this is here. It's a little bit less centered, but that's fine. I'll let that stay for now. Now we get into the technicals. So we've already set up some particular pieces here. We've got our input space. We've got a button that accesses and, accepts our input. And what happens with that button, which is right here, the press me button as shown. Oops, yeah, let's do this. Let's do side by side here, break this down. The press me button is going to activate this function. We haven't gone too much into functions yet, Grant, but basically it's just code in a nice convenient block. You're going to see that these curly braces play a big part in organizing our code. So with that in mind, all of this from line 28 to line 40 is where the button click function code is. Yeah. And what happens is basically the lines in between. The beginning is the opening curly brace, the ending is the closing curly brace. And it's a way for us to organize many lines. Right now we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 lines of code, but we're calling it with a single reference. Hi, Ivar. Welcome in. Welcome in. How you doing? So it's kind of a way for us to package code into one little word. And whenever we use that word, we basically run that code. In this case, we're packaging it in the button click function right here, it's defined. That would be this guy. That wouldn't really make sense because we want to make sure we type something in first. We want to make sure there's something in that input before we actually, well, the variable, if you're making it global, just the variable, potentially. But key for that is normally we don't like to make global variables unless it's absolutely necessary, because that's a key for an exploit. Like, not that this is going to be anything big. This is just a kind of home workbench. But if I use this and basically move it outside of the function, then it's going to exist in the whole program, which is actually also inefficient programming. This variable is going to exist forever and it's going to take up extra space in the background. But for the case of just having this function or this variable exist for this split moment, we do the button click, we activate the function, the user in gets created, it looks inside of the element ID input, grabs the value. Double click. Yeah. ID user input, ID user input. Proper ID so far. And it grabs the value of the input, but we're only wanting it to be existing within this particular area. This is called a scope. The scope of button click starts here, and the scope ends here. What happens outside of the scope is basically everything that was created in between gets destroyed, which is good for memory management. So normally we don't like to create global variables unless they're going to be really used back and forth between different places. So basically what I have here is you've got the user in, I've split it. This is a bit of an advanced type of variable. It's called an array, but if I open up my inspector, go to console, and then just type something here, and I press that button. We have a nice organized set. Oh yeah. I mean, I got some coffee. I got a couple of things I got to do tonight, so that's why I'm still up. Good activity. I mean, hey, I'm enjoying the company. Thanks for keeping me company, guys. Mm. I got a couple of things I got to do, so I got maybe 30 minutes or maybe an hour before I have to go. But I figured I'd check out and see how everything's going on. Um, so I've taken a string, a single string, and I've separated it into an array. What an array is literally a type of organized bookshelf. Level one of the bookshelf has the word type stored. Level zero. Computers start at one, but they call it zero. Keep that in mind. Basically, computers begin counting at zero, which is so weird for humans because humans, well, we have a finger, one finger. We start at one, and then computers are like, nope, just kidding. Zero is the way to start. So anytime we have this sort of organization of numerical values, it does start at zero, one, and two. So the array is holding these values at these locations, zero, one, and two. And it tells you also a couple of things about it. The length is three. So three items, which this is one of the most common issues in programming is the off by one error. You know there's three items in there, and then you want to get the third one, but you put three, and the computer's like, what do you mean three? There is no three. The largest number I have is two. And then you confuse yourself because you know there's three things inside, but the computer's like, no, there's only two, but it starts counting at zero. That's basically the confusing part when it comes to this sort of off by one error. We basically do this, we program, and we don't even think about it. Sometimes it just kind of uh, it just bypasses our normal human brain, and we make a small error. But always good to keep track of the counting. Thanks, Grant. Appreciate the support. Now, this is actually important because when we organize these into smaller pieces, we let the computer basically understand individual values. 0, 1, and 2 now hold three different words. Keep in mind, the way we split them is by human readable language. When we speak as humans, we put spaces between our words. So every string in JavaScript has its own little extra functions. User in is being taken from the input as a single string. So user in variable is going to also contain the string. However, we're splitting that string into multiple pieces. No sound. No sound. Well, others are hearing. Not sure what the sound issue may be, but it looks like Grant is listening as well, so make sure your audio is working well. Or, oh, maybe you're just okay, okay, okay. You're just watching the code. Got it. So the split here, it creates this organization. And this is going to be useful for us because first, it's not going to be useful in this way. Ooh, nice. So your PHP backend, your MySQL as well, I imagine. Very cool, very cool. I got myself some projects in PHP and all that jazz too. I'll be going into it in the future, making your backend API, creating tokenization, logins, all kind of stuff like that. But I'm starting slow, beginner level stuff. So maybe it's good enough to take a look at, and also maybe get you a little drowsy so you can get to sleep. So glad you're in here too. But that's cool. Yeah, full stack is a good level. It's honestly going to be one of the best case scenarios. You're a very diverse skill set, especially if you do design on top of it. Great, because most of the time it's either mechanics, back end design, mechanics, or front end design, and at that point it kind of becomes like You're either very creative or super logical, and most people can only be one of those two, you know? But when you're both, that's where the superpower comes up. So I've only been printing this split, so I'm not saving this array I'm showing currently. I'm just doing it visually. That's where we left off last time. So I'm going to grab this, take it out of the console log, and I'm going to create a new variable. We'll call it command array. And then I'm going to go ahead and save that split into this variable because we're going to be using this. We want to be able to organize the string into smaller parts so that the computer, the JavaScript programming, can understand what we're looking for. Now, for the case here, we were using user in before as a single string, but now we have a bit of a more advanced system going on. And the system is this 0, 1, and 2 organization array. What I want to do is the general sense of my type of, yeah, of course, I can. And in fact, that would be the best case, console log here and then command array, right? So just so I can visually show it, it's gonna not change anything. It's gonna be basically the same thing, right? And boom, same idea. But this time we're at least saving the variable for use, and that's the importance of using variables in a general sense, being able to save pieces of info so we can reuse them for the future. And we can technically keep using user in that split over and over and over, but it's probably more processing. It's unnecessary, and it just makes our code look very ugly. So anytime we can organize ourselves, use variables to save information, that's the best case. So again, there's our array, but normally, here's my kind of general sense when I'm doing command-based stuff. Whether it's Python, whether it's JavaScript, I always have the first thing I type in as the command. So I'm going to call it a CMD. Then the second is attributes, right? This is a typical command line type organization. I like to do it as command greater than, and then the attributes just being laid out flat as text. For us, we've kind of already gotten our command as G. I'm basically going to attach a Google search and further YouTube and all the other case scenarios so that I can search all of those just from my little terminal here, my little workbench. But first, I'm going to just set up the Google search, and then we're going to expand to YouTube search, DuckDuckGo, basically whatever search you want to add onto the list. And we can probably expand it into another array of organized values. Okay, well, that would just print the string. Sure. So yeah, that's a good idea to do. So let's look at the two differences here. So user in before we split it into an array is going to be just a regular string. Good idea. And then that string gets converted to this organized form of an array. So type something here now is type in the first location, 0 index, something 1 location, first index, and then here, third location, second index. And that's the usefulness of it. What I want to do is always follow my kind of general protocol. I want to use my G and identify G greater than. So I'm looking at what I type first, which will be in the 0 index. So that means I'll take my command array, replace that with the user in from last time. I'm going to use the brackets. This is how we access the inside values. Just like it's the brackets here showing what the inside values are. And that's in the command array. So I'm going to be using that command array, which is this set of brackets, but I'm also using brackets and putting the number 0 for the first index. And what this is going to do is I'm only going to take out one of these values, just the first value. And in this case, well, it's going to be type, but I haven't quite considered matching yet to the G. So, and here's another case. You can always test these out. I love the console because you can basically work out this sort of stuff in here. Technically, I'm at a dilemma because if I do type user in, it's not going to exist. This is kind of why maybe potentially you were thinking about using it as a global. So I can't really observe my user in variable in the console. But just for the moment, I can create my variable command array outside. and then I populate it with the split. And now I should be able to press button and Command R. Nope, it still hasn't saved. Okay, so no, it's not going to save the value. I guess it's just using as a kind of empty shell. That's unfortunate. That's a part of the scoping process. It creates the value in here and then it destroys it. So even that's not going to work out, which is all right. But trust me when I say that this command array bracket 0 is going to access the first value in the sequence. Submit only if you're working with a form. So if I have the button in a form, right? So if I have the form value around, and then I have a bunch of inputs, labels, and all that stuff. And the last thing you'll do, and this is the case for when you have what was it? Type. I haven't done these in a while. Type equals post or get, and then that button uh type equals submit will activate that form overall. Yeah, yeah, I guess I'm so used to using var for so long. I just like it. I mean, for the educational sense of things, because we call it a variable, right? So in the beginner sense of things, I'm using var just because we're going into the word variable. And it's good to remember variable is the key word that's being used. But he's correct. It's an old way of doing things. So if I replaced variable with let, it's just kind of a more human coding language that they've decided to upgrade JavaScript with. Does the same thing. Constant, in the case of here, is actually going to create a non-changeable variable. So probably not the best case. But I'll just keep these as the same, or keep one as variable 1, and just make a point here that var for variable is the older method of creating variables. Let is new. That's kind of a key point to put up. You make a good point there. Do I like it? I don't know, man. Everyone's trying to make computer programming so much more humanistic, but var is what it is, var is a variable. I'm a mathematician, so I like to be very discreet with my information or direct. So var and let accomplish the same thing. But I'm sure at some point they're going to stop using var, completely depreciate it, and remove it from any future coding. And that's because we keep updating JavaScript over and over with new functionality, and old things get thrown into the dustbin, legacy, if you will. So now I'm testing here, and I want to test to make sure that it's actually activating based on the thing I type. So I'm going to type in here. I'm going to save this real quick, refresh. And now I'm going to type in G greater than and some search stuff, terms. Now I have activated the form or the alert from that case. Not their form tags on submit. Button click type. Button type submit. Are you creating a regular tag? Form tag on submit. Button click type button. Man, this could be something new. That's an interesting case scenario. Not there. So you are using a form or no? That's my kind of confusion. Are you talking about a whole form or just the button itself? Because I mean, in the case of the button, this works fine. A button that's created, use the on click to activate the listener. You can also activate it with like on what was it? On key press or what was it? On event. Let me see. If I do let me give this an ID. User or command button. You can also do, I forget I got to use the autocomplete. So document dot get element by ID, command button, and then set, no, not attribute, listener. Yeah, add event listener. You can create an add event listener in the same format. So that would basically do the same similar idea as the on click. So add event listener, then you can do click, and then you can put the function that you want to. So on button, or really button click is the function name. So this is just a much more customizable factor that you can directly connect anything. You can basically make anything clickable, which is the interesting thing here. Just got to give it an ID and then direct that ID. You can make text clickable, have some hidden text somewhere that do something, whatever code you wish, right? But in the case of simplicity, I just like to use the on click. It's probably, you could correct me or not. It's probably obsolete too, the on click. That seems to be a pretty simple way to do this. So both of these will work, but since we have one of them already going, I'm just gonna comment this one out and call it a day, but keep it there as a reference. Now, I have confirmed that my code inside is working for the check. So what are we checking? We're checking that the very first thing we're typing as our command executor is the G greater than. We can also see the console log print out. Oh, interesting. What's over here? Oh, maybe this thing's in the way. There we go. At zero index, that's where our command execution is identified. And basically stating, I want to use Google, and then here's the search terms that I want to add at the end. That's basically what we're doing. We haven't done anything with the search terms yet, but that's where loops are going to come into big play here. Because at first, we have to make sure that we have a certain length. Because a person can type in one thing, two things, three things, four things, five things, but at some point we got to be able to do it dynamically. But we'll start with something simple. All right, so we've got that set. Well, what can we do now? We can start working on what was it, window location? Let me double check that. Because there's a way that I want to set it up where I open up a new tab with the target. Was it window dot location, new tab? I forget what it was. Because then there's the location dot href, which you can change. Yeah, blank. Window open. Okay, there it is. All right. So we can now start working on figuring out what to Google. But I don't need this little alert to verify that we have that working. What I do need though is the next command, which there's a couple of variables that JavaScript uses by default. One of them is document, which holds the whole document. So notice how my whole page now is basically blue, which is a reference of, hey, you're selecting your itself, the whole thing. And if I press enter on document, it's going to exactly grab the full object that we have here. Everything, including the code. This is why I like JavaScript too. It's very self-aware for the type of code it is or the script that it is. It's self-aware of its own existence, including the scripting that we write. So it's able to essentially use that. Form on submit, button click, input type text, value user input placeholder type something, button type submit. Search. Uh-huh. I see. So you're defining the input type to text. So it's okay. Gotcha. Gotcha. User input placeholder type here's something. Yeah, placeholder for the text. Button type submit search. Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. At the moment, it is going to be a type of, I guess the proper way would be with a form. Do we need it? Give or take. But the form is going to connect the input type text with the button type submit for sure. So it's a little bit more definitive. It defines it more properly. But so far, not a necessary factor. We're just kind of working. We're just kind of work. I don't want to overcomplicate it, but you got a good idea on the form on submit for sure. But for this case scenario, we're just doing a simple button, simple connection to a function, and then from there, activating that function on command. So whatever we plug in is going to be the activating factor. But you're right, 100%. That would work even better. Yeah, I can turn music on. Well, let's see. I love my little Winamp. Classic. What do you want? Something slow or fast? Something chill or hyped? Okay, fair. I think I already have a list going on that. Let's do it. There we go. Too loud, too good? How is it? User input and input tag, or just add value equals user input. Or just add value equals user input to the input tag. There we go. Yeah, yeah. Oh, whoa, okay. Value would be a case if we're trying to do a pass to a get or a post. That's when you would use value. Then you can create kind of the naming convention to say, hey, post, and then in that post, there would be the value that would be the name. Or no, that was name. Oh, geez, it's been a while. You can call it a name and then the value that it holds. But it works. What we're doing right now is super simple. We're not going to overcomplicate the details. The meta details, right? The internal parts. So in the case of activating, we're going to be using another type. So we have document. We saw what document does. It opens up basically the whole thing. But did you know there's also window control? This is how websites can basically detect where your mouse is. Is it in the window? Are you leaving the website? Are you about to type in the URL? Oh no, send them a coupon. That's a very weird sort of thing a lot of people don't know. The window can track, mouse can track what you do as far as the whole browser window. And what that does, it gives us more power, for sure. We can change the size of the window and all kinds of sometimes abusing things that some websites will do. But in the end, window is a bit more an obfuscated detail. So we'll do a window.open. This is going to basically take our window and take us to a website. So if I just do straight up https www.google.com, no extra details. We'll basically save that, refresh, and then enter our command and activating, and boom, we open up our Google website straight from our little interface. I don't like this one. There we go. That's better. So in the test case, we have an activating identifier, G, greater than, and we open up the window based on that. Now the key is let's pass the actual search we want to look for. This is the more difficult part. First, we got to understand how searches work. So if I do, look at that at the top in the URL, keep track of that URL and what it does. So cute cats, always love doing that. We got cute cats. Cool, great, awesome. That's how it works. But notice what the URL did. It basically took us to a specific type of page called search. And we have a get request, which you can kind of consider as URL variables. The variable name is Q. It equals to the keyword we searched. This is the pattern we want to capture. And then also modify in our JavaScript. So I'm going to grab this because I already have google.com. I'm going to add this to the end of our window open. And from there, now is the key point of adding basically whatever else we're typing in. If we do it manually, it's going to be a little bit trickier, but I can do Command R1. So now I can at least type in a single value. I'm going to save this, refresh, G, lowercase, cats. Press me, activating Google, and there we go. We got a direct search through Google through our custom workbench. The trick is, what if I want cute cats? What if I want something else with multiple words? That's where we have to do a little bit of string manipulation. while we have this case scenario, if I put cats with hats, you know, because it rhymes, we're still gonna only have cats as the keyword because we're only passing in one of the command arguments. Only 0, which is right here, testing to see what our command is, and 1, which is the keyword cats, and that's being passed over here. We kind of have to do a little bit of counting and using a loop to capture everything except G. Not too crazy though. What we want to do before we do the search, create a little for loop. For loops are essentially ways for us to repeat a set of code, and what we're going to do is repeat this loop going through the array until we get to the end. And then we're going to extract the keywords cats with hats, and then create a new string for us to basically pass to Google. Now, remember the key though. We have a little variable or a attribute inside. It's called length. It tells us how long this particular array is, which is great because we need to know how much we're going to be going around in this loop. We don't want to go too many times. So the for loop, we got to start with a variable, a little placeholder. I start with I. We're going to create a variable called I, set it equal to 0, or in fact, maybe 1. There's going to be 3 sections to this for loop. The first one is, what are you counting and where are you starting? I'm going to start at 1. How far do you want to go? Well, I want to go as many times until my I gets greater than or equal to, or it has until it's true, until I is less than the length. So we got to grab the length here. So command R is the holder for these little pieces of info here. And to access the little length, all I got to do is dot length. That's it. So we're saying, hey, keep going as long as this is true, as long as I is less than 4 right now. But it does depend on the case that sometimes when we have more things plugged in, it's going to be longer. It's going to be 5, it's going to be 7, it's going to be 8, it's going to be 10, and so on and so forth. That's important to realize. From here, that gives us the ability to basically put in whatever much we want. However many pieces of text and words. Now, at this point though, I doesn't really change. I stays 1 forever, so this would go on forever. So there's a third section to this. The third section is going to be specific to what do you want I to do. We want it to increase. Every time the loop goes through, we want to increase the value. And we want to basically, we can do it by 1s, by 2s, by 3s, by whatever number we want. The simplest way, I'm pretty sure you can do that here, is to say I++. This just basically says, hey, if I was 1, after this loop is going and it's done, the loop starts up here, goes to the end curly brace, and basically runs the code inside. So this is the start of loop, and then the end of loop. So once it gets to the end, I increases by 1. So for the next time it starts, this variable I that we're using as a kind of counting mechanism is going to increase to 2. We're just counting. So what happens? Let's see what happens here. Console.log. Let's get I to actually see what happens here. So I'm going to refresh, save. G. Some text here. Press me. Activating. Oh, I did actually go. But here's the 1, 2, 3. This is I. I was 1. Goes through the loop. I increases to 2 by 1. Goes through the loop. I increases to 3 by 1 again. And it's going to do this for every amount of text we add. So, and then some more text. There it is. Now we go up to 8. This is dynamic programming. A single variable can only achieve so much, but when we create an array, we have a lot more control over basically being able to count what is happening, how many items we need to go through. So now I'm printing the console log I, and it's showing me all the countings that are happening through the loop. Loops are super important, super great. In fact, if you think about it, any type of game, they have a loop. It's called the game loop. You turn on your PlayStation, you put a little CD in there, what happens? PlayStation. Then your game pop up with a screen, I don't know. But after that, you go to the start menu. The start menu loops. It stays there until you press something. It keeps on going, listening for your command. When you press play, the start menu loop takes you to the game loop. And that's a whole kind of different mechanic. It's for game developers. And that loop keeps on going until potentially you lose hit points to 0. You go to the next level and continue the loop in a different space. But everything we do in programming is basically a continuous loop. This one's a temporary loop. That's it. This one actually has an ending life, and it ends at the end of the text being inputted here. So 1 through 8. In this case, for the amount of text I've put. So seeing the loop, now we can basically kind of get a good instinct on what's happening with this code. It's going so quick you don't see it, obviously. But it is going over and over and over 8 times. Now, what do we want to do through this process? We want to grab the text outside, and since we're starting at 1, we're already excluding the G command. We don't want the G command. We don't want to put that in the search. All you want to do is create a command that says, all right, I want to Google something, and then here's all that something. So all this something we want to now be able to extract and create a nice string for Google. Google likes the strings where, like over here, cute cats. Right here. Oh, too far. Not only is each word on the string, they're not using space. That's kind of a trick here. You can't use spaces in URLs, so Google uses spaces or pluses as a substitute for spaces. So not only are we going to take the words, align them in a string, but we're going to replace, or we're going to put a plus in between each one of them, basically. So that's the goal, and then we can basically send it to Google and then start, or finish. We're basically finished with Google, then we can add YouTube, then we can add anything else on the list. Now I need a command here, or I need a variable to hold my command. So I'm going to create a variable, let search terms equals to empty. We'll start it with an empty set. So there's our string, it's empty, nothing's in there. But we're going to build it inside of our for loop. So every time we go through, we want to extract from the command array. So we take a value from value from value. And I'm going to attach it to the search terms variable. And we're going to do this with a quick trick. We can technically do it in one way. It's equals, and then search term plus where that command value is, and it's in the command array. So we're going to grab the sentence or the word inside of that space. But we're going to grab the one based on the counting method. First, we're going to get 1, then 2, then 3, or in the case of a lot, 4, 5, 6, and 7. This is where loops can be so dynamic, we can control and extract everything based on numbers. So I'm going to put I in here. That's our counting mechanism. So instead of just printing it so we can see that it's going through 1 through 2 to 3 through 4, now we're going to be using it as a guide for the extraction process. And that's basically it. But I did forget something. Not only are we going to do that, we want to make sure we add a plus, because that was kind of the last caveat here. Google doesn't use spaces in the URL. So instead of a space between words, we gotta put a plus between words. So that's gonna put each word into a string, add a plus at the end, and then repeat at the top, go to the next word, add it to the list or to the string, and then put a plus at the end over and over. The only problem here is we're gonna kind of add a plus at the very end because there's always gonna be a plus there. That's not an issue. It's not gonna change the way we work things. So that's us building the search terms. Now, instead of just using one variable or one array value to search for just that one thing, we can condense everything into a single variable. And of course, we can also console.log and take a look at what happened. Now, we can save, refresh, cute cats in hats, and we press. So there's our array. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 values. Click OK. There's our particular set, cute cats in hats. It didn't go though. Let me see. It worked before. Oh, okay. Now it worked. There we go. Cute cats and hats. I guess it was a little bit of a hiccup. So now our little workbench can do Google. Okay. Well, how do we do YouTube? How do we do Amazon? How do we do anything else? We basically repeat the process. But it's going to get a bit more complex. Not even complex. It's going to just be really long, right? We're going to have an if statement that goes through Google. We're going to have an if statement that goes through all the other variables involved. Or I can do a little trick. But for now, I'm going to end it here. Next time we'll do some Google. We'll do a little bit more arrays because the next case scenario is actually to create search sites. And we're going to have HTTPS www.google.com/search q, and then we're gonna have HTTPS www.youtube, and we can swap between each one of these. And I think YouTube was, let me see, I gotta test it out on YouTube. If I search for cats in hats, this case it's com/results ? Search query, and there it is again. The plus is in the way there, so the plus is never changed based on search, right? But the URL does change, so I gotta adjust that particularly. So I'll just add that to the list, at least on the array. youtube.com results ? Search query. That's the variable here. Search _ query is the name of the variable, and it's similar to the Q, but it's much longer. That's kind of the difference there. Google uses Q. I haven't watched movies in a long time, so I can't really say that I'm excited for any movies to come out, but I'm glad you are. I hope you enjoy it. Maybe I watched the Cat in the Hat one. Maybe. It's kind of a childhood thing. That's true. There it is. But let's see. Query. And then we're going to end on the equal sign, because then the equal sign would be the next set here. And here, actually, we can update this at least for this particular case. Instead of using a string here, now I can update at least for this particular case, search sites of 0. So now we're just going to use this array value for Google. So at least now we've condensed it a bit. But futuristically, we're going to be able to add different sites to this particular array. And then from there, continue to create a much more intricate set of searches. Hello! Hayo! Ravi Singh. What's up? How you doing? How you doing? Welcome in, everybody. Make sure to like and subscribe. We've got plenty more to code. This is going to be the end of this session, though, but we will do plenty. I think I'm going to come back tomorrow. It's the weekend. I don't have too many students. Happy to see everybody here. Thanks for joining. Thanks for joining. Hope you enjoy. Yes, Grant is one of my students. He gets the one-on-one tutoring systems. This is, I would say, maybe a little bit too advanced, Grant, but we're gonna get something similar to this. We gotta really practice in on it. I'm going pretty quick on the stream too, so I'm pretty sure everything's a little bit. Like the key for streams is everything is here. You can rewind, you can go through it over and over and really get an idea for it. What I'm gonna do also is normally I go into the content that I've had live and just cut out the bits and pieces and make them into their own videos so they're easier to digest. I mean, we've been here for an hour. So normally everyone likes like 10, 15, 20-minute videos, you know. So if you're chilling for an hour, kudos to you for sitting in through the programming. But that's what I like to do, is to take all that, condense it into smaller videos, upload them. So right now we're essentially building a simple workbench, just an HTML based, where you type in a command. In this case, we're building the search engine type command. You type in something in here, you want to search it, you put G. You want to go to YouTube, you put YT, and based on this little simple input, you just go directly to the website that you want to search. So right now we got G for Google. So if I do G command here, and let me zoom in real quick. Yeah, there we go. G, cute cats and hats, and I press this. I'm essentially going to go straight to Google with the search. So it's kind of like a little workbench for anyone to kind of play with, learn the basics in programming, and we're going to expand on it. At some point, I'm going to add a little function for the weather, so you can check the weather from that little terminal. It's almost like having, a little command prompt. So this little guy. It's like having this little guy where you can type in your commands, but for the internet. I think that's pretty cool. And we're going to expand on it. We're going to use JSON to basically contact other websites, get weather, whatever. There's so many things we can do when it comes to us controlling, the browser itself from the coding perspective too. But yeah. What else? What else? So yeah, just a simple workbench. In the future, though, I do want to go through PHP. I do have, actually, very old videos, if you wanted to look at them for more advanced stuff. Some templating. So I'll go to PHP on my website, wrestling with nested functions in PHP, PHP automation in web pages, transforming a static template. This is actually very useful for anyone going into a more advanced set of, taking someone's template and then applying PHP to make it interactive, dynamic, changing. So the levels are out there. I have plenty of videos based on more advanced coding, but for these segments that I'll be doing lives on a particularly daily basis, I'm going to do the more beginner stuff, get everyone kind of going on the same route, and we'll advance together as we go through each stream. And of course, I'm going to take the videos or the streams and convert them into small bits of videos so you can watch later. So make sure you like the stream, subscribe for more. We're going to go through a lot of different programming, but we're basically starting on the beginner set. So if you're a beginning programmer, just on the concepts, how it works, how we use loops, how we use variables, how we can create our own basically custom application in a web browser, this is the thing you want to work with. This is where you want to start it up. I'll probably be doing daily streams, so subscribe and hit the notification to keep up. Will be always appreciated. But yeah. Anyway, that's gonna be it for me. Thanks for joining in, everyone. Namaste. Appreciate you guys being here. And